economy, we have covered fraud, we have covered gaming, AI, and innovation. And now we will end the day with the most important advantage of them all, the human advantage. So it's a really, really, really great pleasure for me to be able to introduce Mikkel Severin, who's a keynote speaker, CEO and author, Mind Control, EQ in the Age of AI, the human advantage. And Mikkel is going to speak about why EQ, emotional intelligence, is the human edge as AI takes on more decisions and communication. And also the practical techniques to actually decode people, micro-expressions, voice, empathy, etc. But who am I to speak about that when we have Mikkel Severin in the room? So welcome to the stage, Mikkel. A big round of applause.
Thank you. So I'm really excited to be here with you today. The first question I have to ask you is, how do you measure success? What is success for you? So assume that in 3 months' time, 1 year's time, you hit your financial targets. Are you a success? That's a good question. As I'll cover, I don't think so. I think that there is a far better definition of success. So my name is Mikkel, and I advise top executives and organizations on decoding of people and emotional intelligence within leadership and negotiations based on my mind control techniques. So what I do is that I study the best of the best in every different field, whether it's a big companies, small companies, public companies, private companies, hospitals, military, athletic teams. And the question I'm asking is, how come that there are some people, there are some teams, there are some organizations who are able to achieve spectacular results? And other teams, other organizations, they never get there. So what I'm truly interested in is in creating what I term top 1% results. And they share 4 common characteristics. Number 1 is that they achieve exceptional financial or economic results. That means that they vastly outperform the market, factor 2, 5, 10, 20 times. Second criteria is that they engage in massive human thriving and massive human flourishing. And that means that people get to become a better version of themselves. They become more happy, more energetic. They become a better father, better mother, husband, wife, more happier. They get energized. You see, one of the challenges that we see in companies, not only in Denmark, but internationally, is that we see a huge lack of engagement. So just to give you an idea, Gallup, each year they make a report. They make a lot of reports, but one of the report is called State of the Global Workforce. And that they survey, how do we actually fare? And here is what they find. In Denmark, there are 3 groups of employees. You can have employees who are engaged, who are disengaged, or who are actively disengaged, right? You don't want the last 2 groups. But the challenge is in Denmark and internationally, but let me give you in Denmark. In Denmark, 79% of people are either disengaged or actively disengaged. 79%. So in the average of companies, we have a huge amount of stress, misthriving, lack of engagement, and so forth. That is not what we see in top 1%. In the best of the best, we see the people, they become far better versions of themselves. They become very, very happy, and it's very meaningful what they're doing. So third criteria is that it happens very, very quickly. I'll show you some examples of it today. The timeline I work with initially is a maximum of 90 days. If we have not achieved these results within 90 days, it's because we've done something wrong. And just to give you an idea of how quickly it actually happens, my timeline is more in the estimate of days to hours. So to give you an idea, after the first workshop I roll out where I train people in these techniques, the CEOs, leaders, and employees, they write to me the same night, text me, call me, and they write things like this. I have a teenage daughter. She hasn't spoken with me for a year. Tonight I went home and I employed the techniques you learned. She spoke with me for 2 hours, gave me a huge hug, and said it was the best conversation she had had in a long time. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You see, it goes very, very quickly, and we break down silos, we optimize team performance, people get happier, and they get far more productive. And the fourth criteria is that we maintain these results over a long period of time. So exceptional results, massive human thriving, it goes very, very quickly, and we maintain these kind of results for a long period of time. The question then is, okay, what is the secret? Whether we're in the military, in the hospitals, in the schools, big private companies, small companies, what is the secret? The secret is that they have their people as a priority. But they do not only have their people as a priority, they have their people as by far the most strategic, important priority. So there are two criteria you must fulfill in order to generate the results I'm speaking about. And those two criteria, which we will revert to throughout the talk, is that as a team, as an organization, you must be both smart, especially you must be healthy. So when do we see a smart team or a smart organization? We see the people are strong in things like strategy, finance, marketing, technology. You can add to this list. Call this list your capabilities, what you have learned in school, your IQ, what your term for it is. And it's exceedingly important that people are smart. The challenge is being smart, it's just not enough. Because there's another criteria overriding being smart, and that is whether as a team, as an organization, you are actually healthy. So when do we see a healthy team, healthy organization, healthy culture? Here are some of the traits. Number one, we see an absolute minimal amount of politics. That means that if you are in a place where there are more honesty in the hallways than there are meetings, if you're in a place where you speak a lot about stakeholder management, if you are very concerned about convincing certain people before a meeting, you are very, very far from generating a top 1% result. Secondly, we see minimal amount of confusion. And that means that if we have employees who are confused, we have top executives that are confused. Just to give you an idea, if I go out to a random Danish company or international company and I ask the employees and I say, dear employees, how many of you truly understand the company strategy? What would be your guess as to how many employees would say, I truly understand the strategy we're pursuing? So the data shows us that it's usually between 5 to 7%. 5 to 7%. And that means that in the average of companies, we have what I term secret strategies. And a secret strategy means that we have a top executive team who is very, very smart, and now they've made a very grand strategy, very ambitious. The problem is that all the people who are supposed to execute on the strategy, all the employees, they do not know it exists. Secret strategies. And the challenge is that many people, they have internalized the following equation. They think that value equals strategy. So if I'm just more ambitious, if I set higher goals, if I incorporate AI, everything will work out perfectly, right? There's a slight challenge with that equation, and the slight challenge is it's 100% wrong. You see, value is not equals to strategy. Value equals strategy times execution. If you cannot execute, the strategy becomes absolutely worthless. What hinges execution on? It hinges on the amount of healthy organization you have. If you have a very, very healthy organization, you can execute immediately. If you do not have a healthy organization, execution will be slow and poor. Then we have a very high morale, very high productivity, and very low turnover. These are just some of the characteristics if you have a healthy team, healthy department, healthy organization. So in your mind, you might be wondering, okay, how much of my time as a leader or in general do I spend on creating a smart organization versus actually creating a healthy organization? If you are in the average, the leaders, they spend the vast amount of their time creating a smart organization. And they think that KPIs, strategies, and so forth is the way to go. If you are in the top 1% and create top 1% results, you'll spend around 90% of your time actually creating a healthy organization. So what we need is that we need a mindset shift to leaders and people become what I term CHOs, Chief Health Officers. You must understand that the most important thing you can is that you can bring a healthy organization, because when you have that, all the smart competencies will be brought into play, and now you can execute very rapidly, so you'll have a very, very steep learning curve, and as a result, a very, very steep results curve. And what people engage in when they become chief health officers is that they engage in what is known as the trust equation. And the trust equation specifies what happens between trust, speed, and cost. You see, if trust increases, so if you are in an environment with very, very high levels of trust, ask yourself, What happens to the cost and the speed of things? Do the cost increase or do they decrease? Do the speed increase or does it decrease if trust increases? So here's what happens. If you are in a high trust environment, the cost of everything goes down. And the speed of execution and so forth, it increases. On the other hand, if you are in a low trust environment, what happens to cost and speed? You have all here today, you have heard about fraud. It's a low trust environment. So what happens when we are in a low trust environment in terms of control mechanism and so forth? It increases. So we have cost increase and we have speed reduction. If we do not have chief health officers, we click into the trust equation on the bad side. We have higher cost, we have lower speed, we have lack of execution and human suffering. So how do we actually engage in the top 1% dynamics? What is required to become a chief health officer? What is required is that people, they use emotional intelligence to become a chief health officer. So what is emotional intelligence or EQ? In a nutshell, it means what kind of feelings am I driving for myself and what kind of feelings am I driving for other people? Am I a person who gives energy or am I a person who takes away energy? Am I a person where everybody wants to work with me because it's a fun, exciting experience, it's a learning experience, they get to grow personally, mentally, emotionally? Or are people afraid of me? Do they hold back? Do they fear being themselves? So what kind of feelings are you driving for yourself and what kind of feelings are you driving for other people? That is emotional intelligence in a nutshell. And if you were to make a very simple exercise, you can go home tonight and take a sheet of paper and write down 2 columns. And on the header of each column, you say positive and negative. And then the question for you is, what is your emotional home? Just the last week, what is your emotional home? So what kind of positive feelings did you experience? Love, joy, energy, passion, compassion? Or what most people find is usually their positive feelings comes down to 2 feelings. Fine and okay or good, which by the way they are not feelings. And what about on the bad side, on the negative side? What were your primary feelings? Stressed out, irritated, frustrated, angry, depressed, anxious? And then wonder, how much of my time do I actually spend in the positive feelings versus the negative feelings? And what many people they find out that not only do I spend the vast majority of my time in the negative feelings, I only have a very limited vocabulary of the positive feelings I experience. You see, it's very hard to experience love if you don't have a vocabulary for it, just to give you one idea. So that is the essence of emotional intelligence. And I'm also here to tell you that the quality of our life, it depends on the quality of our feelings. The quality of our lives is determined by the quality of our feelings. I do not care how much money you make, what your title is, what your job is. The minute a person is depressed, irrespective of their income or whatever, they're depressed. The quality of our feelings determines the quality of our lives. So the question then becomes, how do we become chief health officer? What is required? Emotional intelligence. Specifically, there are 3 core competencies that is required. And those 3 core competencies are self-awareness, self-control, and empathy. So let's have a look at those competencies, how they look. Here. So there are 12 competencies in total in emotional intelligence, but I'm here to tell you, you only need to know of 3 of those. Self-awareness, self-control, and empathy. Because when people are strong in those competencies, automatically they're strong in the rest of the competencies. Lacking in one of these competencies, automatically they will lack in the rest of the competencies. So what are the insights from these competencies? Number 1, self-awareness. Self-awareness is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence. When do we see display of self-awareness? Here are some of the traits. Number 1, people, they know their own strength, especially they know their own weaknesses. So it's very easy for a person with high level of self-awareness to say something like, I haven't mastered that yet, or I fucked up, I made a mistake. And the reason is because they know that they're a human being, They know that they are perfectly flawed. They're not perfect, so it's very easy for them to say, I made a mistake. I fucked up. But I've learned this going forward. Almost impossible for those with low EQ. A second thing that people who are strong in self-awareness are able to say is that you can ask them a question such as, how are you feeling? And they're actually able to feel and come up with an answer. Notice that fine, it's not a feeling, right? And if you have departments where everybody is just fine, all your alarm bells should sound off. And it's typically the high achiever's word for stress, fine. And fine, it's also a very low standard. So just to give you an idea, if I were to ask you, how's your relationship with your mother-in-law? It's fine, right? It's a very low standard. Thirdly, people who are strong in self-awareness, they display what is called the window and mirror. Now, I'll give you an example from leadership, but notice it's not a leadership competence, it's not an employee competence, it's a human competence. So here's what it looks like. When things go really, really well, a person will stand up if they're in a leadership role and say, it went amazing, but not because of me, I'm just a cherry on top of the cake, but because of you. You had great insight, you had great execution, well done. On the other hand, when things go badly, the same person will stand up and say, we made a mistake. And then they'll clarify and say, I made a mistake. I didn't give you enough time. I didn't give you enough resources. I didn't give you the circumstances in order for you to be successful. The responsibility lies with me, full stop, period. If a person is strong in self-awareness, the first question they'll ask, if they get a result they do not like, is, what should I have done differently in order to have generated a better result? What should I have done differently in order to have generated a better result? We see the opposite with those with low EQ, that when things go really, really well, they'll stand up, also typically in the media. And they'll say things like, I did this, then I did that, then I did this, and then I did that, and because of this, we have achieved these results. And when we analyze their vocabulary, they use the word I 4 times more than those with high EQ. On the other hand, when things go badly, it's a person you don't want to be around, because suddenly each and everybody is to blame. Of course, never the person himself or herself. So suddenly, it's the employees, it's the leaders, it's the board of directors, it's a market, it's the customers, it's HR, it's a strategy, it's a political system, it's inflation, it's a war in Ukraine. Everything is to blame. Of course, never the person himself or herself. And the first question they ask is, what did they do wrong? So are you able to ask the question, what should I have done differently to generate a better result? Instead of asking the question, what did they do wrong? And we see the exact same findings when we study all kinds of traits of the most successful people. So for example, Stephen Covey, he wrote the book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. What is habit number 1? He calls it that people who are highly successful, they are proactive. And people who will never become successful, they are reactive. What is the difference? The proactive, successful people, they think that things is under their control. And it's their responsibility. And when they have got a result they don't like, it's their job to change it and make it better. People who are reactive, they constantly blame others, the environment, and everything but looking inward. We see the exact same finding in all kinds of study. It's a highly pervasive trait. Asking the question, what should I have done differently to have generated a better result? Rather, what did they do wrong? That leads down to self-control in the self-regulation cluster, where we have self-control, adaptability, achievement orientation, and positive outlook. So what is self-control? And notice, it doesn't matter whether we're in a school class, in a kindergarten, in a surgical team, in a sports team, or in a corporate setting. People who are strong in self-control will be described as reliable, predictable, I know where I have him. People who are not strong in self-control, and again, it doesn't matter whether we're in a school, a company, or whatever the setting is. They'll be described as unreliable, unpredictable, I don't know where I have him, spontaneously aggressive, raising their voice, rolling their eyes, they're ticking time bomb, I fear him, I'm not certain how he or she will react, things like that. And it's one of the quickest ways that we can completely demolish a team's performance. And we know that's, for example, from what is called the bad apple studies. So in the bad apple studies, we have groups of 4 people, and then in each group, we insert an actor. Of course, unbeknownst to the group, that it's an actor that we're inserting. And then we tell the actor, we say, dear actor, please play a part of a person who displays low self-control. And then we're interested in, if we just insert one person, it's a group, but if we just insert one person who's not strong in self-control, will that actually affect group's performance? And the answer is, yeah, it will. Okay, then question is, how quickly does it take? A year, a month, a week? How long time does it take before we just insert one person with low self-control so we see an impact on team's performance? It happens instantaneously. And it's so bad that within 45 minutes, the rest of the group start copying that behavior. Then you might be wondering, okay, is it a very small effect or is it a huge effect? It's a very huge effect. So in the control studies, we see a drop in productivity and performance of 30 to 40% because of one person. But I'm also here to tell you that some of the places I've been and helped, if the lack of self-control, especially in a leadership position, is low, I think that 30 to 40% is a very low estimate of the cost of what is actually happening in the team and the company for it. And when a person is not strong in self-control, it is also it leads to what is known as the CEO disease or the leadership disease, and I also call it the parenting disease. So the parenting disease, it means that you have children who have vital information and they need help, yet they do not tell their parents. Leadership disease, or CEO disease, as is also known, is that you have employees who have vital information that might cause you to change direction, change decision, and so forth, yet they do not share that information. And what is the dynamic? You see, most companies are structured so the leaders at the top, who have all the authority, they do not have the information. Whereas all the employees, they have all the information, so they know the product, the market, they have the technical expertise, they do not have the authority. So two things must happen. Number one, we must push down authority. Number two, we must push up information. But what do you think happens the minute we inject a person, especially if it's a leader and they're not strong in self-control? Will that information come forward? And the answer is no, because people, they fear being attacked, rejected, being somehow put outside the group, and so forth, negative consequences. And that's why one of the biggest red flags I can have is, especially if it's a CEO who tells me things like, "Why hasn't everybody told me that?" Well, dear you, as long as you're not able to self-regulate, you'll be the last one to know. You'll be commercially dangerous. You'll act upon limited information, and you'll destroy people's lives. That are just some of the consequences if self-control is off. And then we have empathy, the third one, empathy. So empathy, I believe, is one of the most commercial traits at all that you can develop. Because when you understand people, you can do business with them. And if you do not understand people, you won't do business with them. So first, a very, very vital distinction. I speak about empathy, not sympathy. Empathy is hard, pure, raw understanding in a non-judgmental way. It means I understand where you're coming from. I understand your thoughts, your feelings, your drivers, your needs. Empathy is not agreement. Empathy is not accept. Empathy is not even I have to like you. Empathy means I'm able to articulate where you're coming from, your thoughts, your feelings, your drivers, your need, and so forth, in a non-judgmental way. Sympathy means I feel what you're feeling. And that's not always very smart. Sometimes it's also highly egoistic. But let me give you an idea of why it's not very smart. So for example, if you have a team where people are stressed out, then a sympathetic response from a leader would be, "Oh, you're so stressed out, now I become stressed out as well." And from here, where everybody is stressed out, we have to solve this, right? It doesn't work. Then we need people who are strong in empathy, who are able to say, I can see that there's just way too much in your plate. What about we have a discussion on how we can move things forward? So when people are strong in empathy, they'll be described as they are very good at listening. They take their time, they're tolerant, they understand different perspectives, and then they're always someone who's I term information magnets. And that means that information just flows to them because people like being to them. And as I will show you, empathy, that is the foundation for the highest performing teams in the military, in the hospitals, in the schools, in the public sector, in the private sector, in the big companies, in the small companies. Unfortunately, there's a huge misconception about it being soft skills, because people haven't gotten the insights into what it actually fosters. So those competencies leads to strengthen the rest of the competencies, whether you can coach and mentor people. For example, are you able to make people around you better? Whether you can solve conflict. A lot of time people, they tell me, it's so difficult to have a difficult conversation. It's very difficult to have a difficult conversation if you enter a difficult conversation with low self-awareness, low self-control, and low empathy. But if you enter a difficult conversation with high empathy, high self-control, and high levels of self-awareness, then you'll change a difficult conversation to what is known as a learning conversation, and they can not only be fun, but they will bring a productive outcome from not only you, but from the other party as well. So now I've given you a brief insight into the core competencies, self-awareness, self-control, and empathy. Then you might be wondering, okay, how many are strong in these competencies? So let me give you some data on it. This is a study from 4,322 participants where we looked at how many people are strong in these competencies. And what we're after is that people, they display what is called tipping point strength. And that means that when they're strong within 9 or 10 of these competencies, all results start to escalate. And when they're strong in only a few of these competencies, we see mediocre results and we see human suffering. And this is not, once again, it's not a Danish competence, it's not an English competence. This was done Europe, so it's from all nationalities that we see this data. So this is the data that we see from 4,322 participants. Of those, all leaders, 20% had 0 of the 12 competencies as strength. The majority, 52%, had a maximum of 3 of the 12 competencies as strength. Only 16%, or it's actually 11% I can see, had 10 or more of the 12 competencies as strength. So what then predicts if a person is in the red zone or in the green zone? Here's the good news. The good news is there's one competence that predicts it. And that competence is the level of self-awareness. Those who scored high levels of self-awareness, so they understand their own feelings, they understand their own strength, especially their own weaknesses. They're able to admit mistake and be responsible instead of constantly blaming others. They are highly, highly, highly likely to be in the green zone. On the other hand, if people displayed low levels of self-awareness, they are highly, highly likely to be in the red zone. In the red zone, we see that people, they issue orders, they expect compliance. In the green zone, we see that they listen and they invest in their people. And then you might be wondering, okay, what happens in a team perspective depending on the leader's level of self-awareness? So let me show you some data on that as well. So in this study, it was also looked at what happens in the team depending on the leader's level of self-awareness. So if we inject a team, a leader who is score high in self-awareness, this is what we see. We see that 69%, the green ones, says it's high-performing, 23% says it's energizing, and 8% says it's neutral. So green and yellow, that's 92%. So notice that more than 9 out of 10 people, they say it's a cool environment, it's a high-energy, high-performing environment, I like being here, and I'm doing my best work. Notice that there's not a single person who is being demotivated. Not a single person. What do you think happens the minute we inject a person, a leader, who is not strong in self-awareness? Do you think that now people become demotivated? Yeah. But how many? Do you think it's 10%, 20%, 30%, 50%, 60%, 70%? So in this study, it was 60%. Meaning that 6 out of 10, they're now standing at the coffee machine speaking about what is not working. 6 out of 10 are searching for a new job. 6 out of 10 are disengaged. 6 out of 10 are not executing on all the smart strategies. So this is just to give you an idea of how quickly these mechanisms go if we inject people who are not strong in these competencies. And just to give you an idea, on the other hand, how quickly it can go when we inject people who are strong in these competencies, let me just give you one of my examples. And what I particularly study and help people with is the journey I call from worst to first. And that means ideally I'm interested in people who take on companies, department, teams who are not only doing well or mediocre, but ideally they have to be the worst teams on all parameters in the entire company or the worst company in the entire industry on all parameters. And within 1 year, they have to be the best company or the best team in the entire industry or the entire company within 1 year. So let me just give you one example. So this is Mikkel Severin. He's one of my heroes. I have many heroes. Here's one of them. Here's his story. He was a U.S. commander from one of the ships in the U.S. Navy fleet, a ship called USS Benfold. And when he took command of that ship, there were 300 ships in the Navy fleet. 300 ships. When he took command of USS Benfold, it was the poorest performing ship, around 300 ships. And in their terms of employee engagement and employee satisfaction and so forth, it was one of the worst ships in the entire US Navy. We changed one thing. We changed who the leader was. He came on board. Same crew, same mission, same hierarchy, same budget, same structures. We change who the leader is. How long time does it take before that ship becomes the best ship and the highest performing ship in the entire US fleet? It took 1 year for them to get the prize, right? But the results happens within weeks, start to happen within weeks. So let's hear how he did it. And notice what I've told you so far about self-awareness, self-control, and empathy, and see if you're able to recognize these patterns I've been speaking about. The situation was so dire that when he took command of the ship, all 310 sailors clapped of the previous captain because they were so happy that he finally left, right? So luckily, that's not the situation for you, right? But this is just to give you a benchmark that you can take a team who's absolutely horrifying on all parameters, change how they're being led, and then we see completely different results. So let's have a listen to what he actually did. Let's see if I can play it.
And what William Perry taught me was the importance of building people up rather than tearing them down. In my last day working for him, prior to getting command of the ship, he brought me into his office and sat me down and said, Mike, no matter how hard you try, your ship is never going to be perfect. He said, you're going to have disappointments every day. He said, whenever you're disappointed in an outcome, I want you to remember one thing. He said, assume your shipmates wanted to do a great job. And if you don't get the results you're looking for, don't blame them first. But instead look inward and ask yourself what you could have done differently or better to have generated a better outcome. Did you clearly communicate the goals to them? Did you give them the training necessary to be successful? Did you give them the time and the resources to do a great job? But most importantly, did the process support you delivering the results you were looking for? And after seeing my predecessor getting cheered off the ship, it hit me. I can't order excellence sitting in the captain's chair all day long. So I spent my days walking the ship, talking to sailors, and listening to them. And historically, when the captain is out walking around, we're looking for sailors screwing off so we could reprimand them. I thought, why not turn this upside down? Why not look for sailors doing something great so that I can be William Perry to them? And so I'd walk around the ship looking for sailors doing things great so that I could thank them. You know what? It didn't cost taxpayers a dime. I didn't need to get anybody's permission to do it. Just telling a shipmate that they're doing a great job and that you appreciate it. All it takes is a couple seconds. I do have one form of formal recognition I can give a sailor. They're called Navy Achievement Medals. And they're important to sailors because if they get one, they get a bonus point on their advancement exam. I'm authorized to give out 15 of these medals a year. So I'd walk around the ship with medals in my pocket. And if I caught a sailor doing something great, I'd put a medal on his or her chest right on the spot, thank them for going the extra mile. As I told you, I'm authorized to give out 15 of these a year. I figured nobody at the Bureau of Naval Personnel was tracking how many medals I was giving out. And my first year in command, I gave out 115 Navy Achievement Medals. It's like, what are you going to do to me? You know, put me on one of the worst ships in the Navy and send me to sea? You know, I'm already there.
So that's Michael Brashov. He's a classic worst to first example, a classic top 1% result. What happens after he engaged? They had 100% re-enlistment, 100% satisfaction, and they had the highest performing crew of all 300 ships. Same budget, same restrictions, same hierarchy, same bureaucracy, same missions, same everything. Now, sometimes people say, well, he was the CEO. No, he wasn't the CEO. He was just a middle manager. He was a mid-level leader. There were several levels above him, right? Everybody can do this. You don't have to be a CEO. You don't have to own a team. You can just incorporate this by yourself, in your family, in your team, wherever you are. So what did he actually do? Notice what he speaks in terms of self-awareness. Assume that all people actually wanted to execute. And when they didn't perform flawlessly, look inward first. Did I actually give them the right resources? Did I give them the right training? Did I provide the right direction? Self-awareness first. Then he realizes, I can't order excellent by sitting in the captain's chair and speak out orders. I have to listen to people. So he spent his days as a chief health officer, walking the ship, speaking to people, listening to them. So one of his first priority was, there were 310 people on board. So he said, I want to learn 310 people. So he set up 310 one-to-ones. 310. It took him 5 months. And in those 310 conversations, he asked them, beside learning, getting to know them about their names, their families, their hobbies, and so forth, he asked each individual 3 questions. What do you like about being here? What don't you like as much about being here? And what would you change today if you could? And here's what happened. 30% of the ideas he got, he said, even if I like them or not, it doesn't matter because we simply cannot execute them, implement them. GDPR, budget restrictions, whatever. We simply cannot do it. 30% of the ideas he got, he said, I like it. Then he took the speakerphone and then he said, Benfold, this is a captain. I just got this idea from the sailor. I think it's fantastic. It's implemented. From now on, I want your full cooperation. 5 minutes from ideas to execution. How long time do you think it takes in an average company for an employee has a very bright idea, that it travels to the chain of command, that some leader gets it, and they're like, that's brilliant, we're not going to start to execute on it. When I'm at conference speaking, usually the response is, at us, 6 to 12 months when we are quick. So yesterday I was at another gig, and there a person said, it's 2 years at us, 2 years. 5 minutes from ideas to execution, if they could be executed. Then he said 40% of the ideas, he said the following, he said, I like the ideas, but I have this concern about it. Why don't you go back and think about it and think if you can come up with a new solution that actually handles my concern? And then they went back and thought about it, and then they came to him and said, Captain, I think that if we change it and do this instead, I think we can do it. And then he said either, let's go, or he said, now I got a new concern. Why don't you go back and think about it? Some ideas got up, some ideas were pushed down, and he found tremendous nuggets in that. Based on that idea from one of the sailors, they changed how they purchase environment and all things in the Navy based on one of the ideas from the sailor, just to give you an idea. $1 billion impact that they had. So he's a chief health officer and he achieved these results. Notice it happens in the military, as in the schools, as in the hospitals, as in the private sector. It's the same mechanics because it's human nature dynamics. So let's have a look at what is actually the foundation for the best performing teams. And how does it tie in with emotional intelligence? So Google, they asked themselves the question, is how come we have some teams who are always high performing and we have some teams that just never make it? What's the difference? And they spent years surveying data, analyzing, and so forth. And here was their initial hypothesis. If we just get all the smart people, an experienced leader, and they have shitload of resources, we have a high-performing team. Here's what they found. Those 3 things in no way, shape, or form predicts whether we actually have a high-performing team. Instead, there's one key that is absolutely vital. If that key is in place, a team is primed for high performance. If that key is not in place, you will never get there. Forget about it. What is the key? The key is psychological safety. If you are in a high psychological safety environment, it means that you are not afraid to speak up. It means that you do not fear that mistakes will be used against you. You are in a learning environment. How do we create psychological safety? If we have put people together in a group who are strong in self-awareness, self-control, and empathy, then we generate psychological safety. Put people together who are not strong in those competencies, it doesn't matter what it says on a poster on the wall, you will never get the psychological safety that's a primer for a high-performing team. So let's have a look at psychological safety. So psychological safety is the belief that no one will be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. Here's the challenge. Now, all teams or organizations, they can choose to set high goals or low goals. Surprisingly, I don't work with clients who want to set low goals. The typical, when people approach me, is like, we have had this new strategy with double-digit growth for the next 5 years, right? That is the starting point. It's very easy to set high goals, and I'm all for it. The challenge then becomes what happens when you combine that with either high levels of safety or low levels of psychological safety. Let's disregard the low goal zone because I don't have anyone there. But what happens when you combine high goals with high safety versus high goals with low safety? High goals, high safety, you end up in the learning and high performance zone. This is where all the good stuff happens. However, if you combine high goals with low safety, you end up in the anxiety zone. This is where all the bad stuff happens. You have dysfunctions and escalating dysfunctions. Notice it's not either or, what most people think. They think either it's performance or it's safety. No. It's high performance and I need high safety. If those two don't go together, you end up in the anxiety zone. So the best teams, they have very high safety, and because of that, they can put very, very high requirement on each other, and that drives their results. So let me give you an idea of what happens in the different zone. In the learning and high performance zone, we see that there's respectful communication, people are comfortable expressing and being themselves, there's a high degree of innovation, then there's true collaboration. So true collaboration, that means that nobody makes decisions based on what's the best for themselves. Everybody makes a decision based on what is best for the team. Are you able to put the team before you, or do you put your own agenda first? In the best teams, there are no egos. In the best teams, we make decisions based on the greater good. Then it's very fun, it's easy to discuss things, we have a high degree of conflict resolution and a high degree of recognition. On the other hand, in the anxiety zone, we see that people, they hoard knowledge. They don't share knowledge. Either they think that they are very special, for example, a specialist who thinks, if I don't share this knowledge, then I'm very important, because now everybody has to come to me and ask for advice. Or they hold back information because they fear that they'll be rejected, judged, or they might hold back information in order to sabotage the team if they're actively disengaged. Then it's very difficult to speak up when people are in the anxiety zone, and when people speak up, there's a lot of listening issues. That is why one of the words we hear when people are in the anxiety zone is that a lot of times people, they say, you just need the courage to speak up. The only reason you need courage is due to a lack of safety. If there were safety, courage were needed. Then people are deadly afraid to admit mistakes. So in the anxiety zone, people, they say, it wasn't me. They try constantly to blame other people. They hide their own mistakes. Then we have an impairment of analytical thinking, creative insight, and problem solving. And that means that in our brains, we have something called the amygdala. And the amygdala, that is the brain's fight or flight mechanism. And that is being triggered by fear. It's being triggered by stress. It's being triggered by anxiety. And what happens is that our prefrontal cortex of the brain, where all our logical, rational thinking is located, it shuts down. It is limited. So whenever we induce stress, whenever we induce fear, whenever we induce anxiety, what happens is that we impair people's cognitive performance, period. So now you might be wondering, does it make a lot of sense, because the starting point for teams is not high levels of safety, it's low levels of safety. Does it make a lot of sense to spend millions and millions training, recruiting, promoting people, and then making the team more stupid? Because that is what happens on average teams. Then it's very, very difficult to discuss matters. So to give you an idea of the best and the worst examples, one case I work with, they said the following. They said, at us, in our DNA, one of our prime principles is that we learn by our mistakes. We train it. We recruit based on it. We onboard based on it. It's in our learning methodology. Leaders and people are required to speak about it on a weekly basis. It's part of our DNA. So let me give you an example of the worst case in the anxiety zone. So in my previous life, I worked as an M&A attorney at law. I don't do that anymore. But there were very, very high requirements and goals, very, very low safety in the anxiety zone. Lots of human suffering. Here were their outspoken culture policy. At us, it is one of the biggest law companies in Denmark. And they said the following. At us, we are a zero-fault company. Isn't it lovely? So now you know, you can just call them and there'll be absolutely zero faults, right? And then you might be wondering, okay, did they actually make a fault? Ah, yeah, they did. Did they speak about it internally? No, they didn't. Were people deadly afraid to make a mistake? Yeah, they were. Were there a high learning curve? No, there weren't. Those are just some of the consequences. So emotional intelligence, that's a foundation for us actually achieving the best performing teams because it requires safety. And we achieve that by self-awareness, self-control, and empathy. So what can you do? What can you do tomorrow? Because in a world of AI, the importance of emotional intelligence is only increasing. It's only going to increase. The cost of knowledge will go to zero, and the importance of emotional intelligence will rise through the roof. So what can we actually do? Number one, speak about learning, not execution. The more you can speak about learning, the higher you will increase the level of psychological safety. Number two, admit your own failure and be responsible. You know, it's not hard to do. It's not hard to say the words, I fucked up. It might be hard to overcome the burden to actually admit it, right? But it's not hard to speak the word. So admit your own responsibility and say, what part did I play in this? Be curious and ask a lot of questions. Be an aggressive listener. I teach what I call aggressive listening, empathic intolerance, based on a lot of different principles from everything from NLP, hypnosis, hostage negotiation, and so forth. And when I teach people those skills, that is where they break down silos, they optimize collaboration, they increase speed, their children start to speak with them, and so forth. And then finally, smile. You see, do you need to be an IQ 2000 or PhD in mathematics to do this? Or is this just standard everyday human behavior that we could incorporate in our schools, in our kindergartens, in our education system, and in all companies in Denmark and around the world? And the truth is, we could do this from tomorrow. Now you have had an insight into how vital it is, and I know you also have my book, so you can dig into all the techniques and stuff like this. So here in the end, I would like to have, if you have any questions, you're free to ask me questions. I'll also be here afterwards. But if you have a question you're sitting with right now, you're more than welcome to ask it. I'd like to answer a couple of questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Like a really nice presentation as well. And I just want to ask, because there's sometimes some companies are saying, don't bring your like problems from like home or whatever to the company.
Yeah.
Because it can ruin the mood or atmosphere if they're like discussing it among colleagues or whatever. What's your like take on that?
Yeah. Have you ever seen like a severely depressed person go to work and then not be depressed there and then just go back and be depressed? You see, it's very difficult to separate things, right? And that's why the best teams are like, we especially if it's hard, we'll support you. It doesn't mean that you have to be a therapist for them, right? It might mean to say, you know, I can see there's just way too much going on, right? It's outside my capability. I understand this. We need to get you some help. But I think it's very, very dangerous to say, like, I mean, some of the things, it's very easy. I've yet to see someone who just like spill out all their private life that is not really relevant. So people, they know like where's the limit. But to say that we cannot embrace people, I think that's a difficult path. And I don't think that's a path to actually creating these results. You see, one of the things of the top 1% is that they have a caring culture that is far, far, far more caring than the standard culture. Far more caring. And especially in times of crisis. So just to give you an idea, they set out foundations. So if people come into a terms of crisis, financial crisis, trauma, whatever, they sponsor them, right? Just to give you one example of what they do. Because they're like, you're a full human being, and when life hits you, we got your back. Thank you. Other question? Yes. And your name, by the way, as well.
Thanks a lot. I'm Kenneth Volstrup. I'm from LB Insurance. You mentioned minimizing politics.
Yeah.
What I've found is that sometimes politics is disguised as governance or procedures or something that sort of keeps the politics with a human face, so to speak.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome politics in a sort of human way?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question, first of all. So how do we overcome politics? And a lot of politics is disguised as governance, right? So number one, as a general principle, stupid people need rules, exceptional people needs principles. So what we need to cut down on is rules. So in the book, in part 3, you'll see Severin 7, that is the 7 steps required to achieve these results. And step number 7 is that we eliminate everything that lacks utility. And that means we must go through with a comb on all our initiatives and all our procedures and see, does it actually carry utility, or is it just like a rubber stamp in a process? So we have to really, really ask ourselves these tough questions and say, is this some kind of politics, or does it actually add value and utility? And the good thing is you don't need to bring any external consultants in to do this, because you can just ask the employees and the people who are in the company. And usually my experience is that for employees, it's very, very easy to say at least 5 to 10 things where they say things like, these 5 to 10 things or procedures we have, they make no sense. Like we do them, but it's just a rubber stamp. And if you just harvest that information and then of course act upon it, right? So how do we discard politics? Number one, we become very aware that we are focused on corporate or team goals, that we are all working together. Number 2, that we eliminate everything that doesn't lack utility. And it's a leadership principle that is stated from above. So that is also why it's so important that this is an agenda set on the team level and on the corporate CEO executive level, because those are the ones who will bring it to life in the full organization. Thank you. Our final question. There was a question here, I think. Yeah, there was a question here. That was the final question. And what's your name?
Thank you. My name is Esben.
Esben.
So my question is more, I am very sympathetic with what you presented, but if I think about one of the most financially successful men at the moment in America, he doesn't really align with everything you just said. So if you consider Elon Musk and what he achieved, what are your thoughts in terms of being so far away from what you just described and still so at least financially successful?
Yeah. So number one, you can achieve massive, spectacular success, as Elon has in this regard, despite your behavior, not because of it. But everyone who has achieved despite, they could have achieved even more if they also have incorporated this. But once you study Elon, you will see that he operates very, very high alignment with Severin 7. So just to give you one idea, for example, a lot of companies, they withhold information, and it's very like if you're a leader, you have information, and then you can control information who gets it, right? One of his principles is information must flow immediately to the point of where it's necessary. If you follow the chain of command in Tesla, he says you shouldn't be in Tesla because we need information directly to where it is. So he incorporates very, very many of the principles. You also see that his employees, he has 20% of his employees who say they'll go through fire and water for him. But you also see 80% of employees who have hit themselves really, really hard in the process of being with Tesla or with SpaceX, right? So the question I'm asking, if those 80% were led in another way, where they could use their full energy there, could they achieve even more spectacular results? I think so. I think to a high degree so. But that doesn't mean that he cannot achieve, as he has done, spectacular results. Notice, it's not because of, it's despite of, right? And you will see people close to him being very fearful in his regard. And when they do that, they suppress information. Okay, so that was what I had for you today. Remember, smart and healthy, becoming the chief health officer, and it all requires self-awareness, self-control, and empathy. I'll be up here if you want a signing of the book or if you want to ask me a question. Otherwise, thank you so much. It has been a terrific time for me to being here. I hope you had a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mikkel. Thank you, and thanks to all of our speakers today. That's actually a wrap on the formal program. The day isn't over, but we are getting there, right? So I have one more question for you. So if you can get the phones out and get the QR scanning ready. So we have a question. In 1 or 2 words, what inspired you most from today? So it's 1 or 2 words Where did you get your inspiration from today? That's going to be interesting with all these different type of speakers we have had up here. Gamification came up quickly. Mikkel Severin, that was good. EQ, healthy team, people, trust, leadership. It's a lot of good, inspiring words. I was actually looking for AI, but it's there. That's good. Self-awareness. A lot from the last session, I can see. A lot of good inspiration. No cathedral, 10th first. We like that. From Carla's presentation. That's good. There's a lot of good inspiration from today, so that was the whole purpose of the Innovation Summit. So good to see, and yeah, a lot of good inspiration in general. So if we go to the next slide, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody in this room. That is not my slide, right? Maybe I'm taking over your presentation, Mikkel, so watch out. Thank you to everybody in this room for being here, and also thank you everybody online for being here and listening to all the great speakers today. I want to say a special thank you to Make a Wish and Not Another Monday for making wishes come through and for keeping the coffee flowing all day long, and to our AV and Lightning partners, Speakerbee, and to Clarion Hotel, who helped making this experience really, really amazing. I also want to extend that thank you to the marketing team, who has been amazing setting this up, and also to the employees who has been helping out today. You have seen Heidi at least run around with the microphone, so that's a really, really big help. And this will actually be the last QR code. I know it's a big ask for you, but if you can please take a moment to scan the QR code on the screen or on the back of the magazine, because we need the feedback to make sure we can improve and do even better for the next Innovation Summit. So give us your honest feedback about what you have seen today and help us to make sure that we can be hopefully better next year. And that's also go for the online audience, who will receive a link and you can do exactly the same. So it's really, really important that we get this feedback. So to those in the room, please join us for a bit of networking, getting together. Area for light refreshments is out there. There will be more great coffee. I know it's really, really hard to believe, but there will be more great coffee. And there will be all the conversation in the world that actually matters. And before you leave, don't forget, before you leave, don't forget to drop this one off in the boxes outside. Drop the digital lanyard in the white boxes at the exit. So that's about it. Thank you for being part of the Experian Innovation Summit 2026. And hopefully I'll see you at the Experian Innovation Summit 2027. Thank you so much. Thank you.